Welcome, everyone, to another episode of UFO Undercover. Hope everyone's having a great evening, great morning, great afternoon, wherever you are on our big, beautiful blue planet. I know you'll hear me say this every week, guys, but really, I got to be honest, there's really no other place that I really want to be on Wednesday nights in here. I mean, I love coming here every Wednesday. I have a blast coming here and chatting with all our different guests who I'm going to introduce in just a minute. But, there's so much stuff that goes on, and there's so much to keep up with. And it's one of the reasons this network, and for that matter, this radio show got invented. I mean, back in the old days, I used to host for Wake Up USA, a UFO study, and by sheer accident, by the way, somebody said, "Oh, you've been hosting where?" Whatever. We used to go and we had this support group online for one of our abduction groups, and we used to go in there and do support, and we would chat all night long, maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we'd answer millions and millions of questions. And there's a big group of us from ICAR that did it, and a guy who owned Stardust Radio used to come in and listen. So one night he just come in and said, "Hey, you want to come host Wake Up USA, a UFO study?" I'm like, dude, I've never done any radio, right? He said, "Yeah, I can teach." I said, "No, dude, I mean, really, seriously." I said, "I've never done any radio. I don't know what call." I said, "I don't know anything about any of this." So, there's a lot of stuff I had to learn because it was AM radio. So there's certain things we had to adhere to that we can get away with. We don't have to get away with on the internet, but still, I started hosting the first 2 nights. You could tell, man, I was nervous, right? Because I was chattering oh man, just like a little box, 5,000 words a second and stuff. First show I ever did on radio, I got in an argument with the guest. We argued for 2 hours. I would have said it was a disaster. It was a really highly rated show, so apparently it wasn't a complete disaster, but it was freaky. And then after that, it kind of snowballed, and we were doing ICAR stuff, and then we just started Coast to Coast and Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. And we've been on History and Discovery a couple of times. And, well, after a while, people get to know who you are a little bit anyway. Because somebody asked me, how famous can you be in paranormal ufology? And you can be fairly famous. I mean, you can't be like, some crazy rock star or even some of the politicians, but you can get up there. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's guest is Michael Roser from Dark Hour Paranormal. And we're going to talk about a lot of things because I've had a couple of discussions with him after Laura Lai's show, The Angel Rocker. He's a regular guest over there, and him and I have had a couple of discussions late after poor Laura Lee's probably going, let me go to bed, y'all. Leave me the hell alone. Let me out of this mess. I need my rest, man. I live up here in north. But anyway, Michael, welcome. I've been looking forward to talking to you. I figure we'll just kind of do an open forum and just talk about whatever we want to discuss tonight. Guys, don't forget you can find us on tonight. We're on Twitch, Parler, UFO YouTube, United YouTube, and then 4 Facebook pages. So, and then of course everything else we go on over audio on every podcast that you can find us on. So, look around. If you have a problem, just go to unitedpublicradio.com and it'll start playing automatically for you. So you don't even have to do anything. Just open a web page and it'll just start singing to you like, "Oh, we love you." You can hear Michael and I talking about all kind of stuff. Ooh, you see. Well, I'll be totally honest, guys. In the old days, I used to have like 30 links up there to anybody, Real Player this, Winamp that, Microsoft. Oh, yeah. So after a while, I got to be irritating because people call me or write me, "I can't do it." So I said, I'm going to eliminate all of this. I just made it the way it plays on the page now. There's no worry about if you can't find anything. It just plays, people. That's all you got to do. Yes. I learned something a long time ago about radio and TV and building websites. I always think you should make it so that an idiot can do it. I'm serious. Because, I started doing websites at HTML. And now they got these builders that look, man. My grandkid, 4 years old, could get up here and build a massive website. And it looked good, too. I mean, like, damn. One of the best websites I've ever seen was built by a 12-year-old kid. I was like, look at this stuff. But I mean, it's out there. Same thing with some. Michael and I were talking just before the show about some of the new streaming software that's out there and available today. It really makes it easier, especially with somebody like me that's hosting multiple shows a day. I like this one. I can set up 4 or 5 shows in advance. Well, I've set up 4 so far. I don't want to say 5, but it works great. I can just click them, drop them in, go. It tells you when you're live. You don't even have to wait for the countdown anymore. You used to count everybody in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now it's like live. Start talking, people.
That's it. We're hot.
And then it says "shut up" at the end. Well, if I could make it say "shut up," it would. But apparently they won't let me have access to their software. If I could, I would, make it say shut up.
Just need a source code or two, and you're good to
That's
go.
it. That's it. That's
all.
it. I got, I've got some chatty hosts, myself included, by the way. But again, Michael, welcome to the show. So, let me get you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just start somewhere in our topics. So we're good, man.
Sounds good to me, Joe. Thank you very much for having me on. This is definitely something I've been anticipating since we had our first conversation after Laura Lee's show some time ago. Yes. I am Michael Roser from Dark Hour Paranormal. I began this channel about a year ago, essentially because everything in my life was brimming over with research, information, and experience. And I needed a platform that I could work with. Now, prior to this, I did do some time in radio. Unfortunately, the type of radio that I did was not entirely conducive to these sort of topics, but I still did get a good jog in that sort of profession, which, of course, I'm using today. But that being said, my channel is an interview-based channel. We interview the experiencer and the top man alike. And if you are going to mention somebody who's as close to a rock star in the world of ufology, I think that you can get, the first name that comes to mind, of course, is Stephen Greer. I think a lot of people hold him on a very high pedestal, and it's not just because of what he knows, it's the image and the appearance that he presents, and that's just what he does. But yeah, I think there are a few people up at that top of the echelon that might actually be able to hold that sort of superstar status in this day and age.
Yes, and Steven's a nice guy. I've interviewed him a few times.
Sure, I like Steve. Yeah,
I've met him in DC when Stephen Bissett was doing the X Conference. He was a regular down there, and so was I. I always loved the X Conference for a couple of reasons. One, Steve was crazy. Sometimes he'd run 3 venues. I was like, Jesus, dude, I don't even know how you're doing 3 venues. I mean, you have work. It was just insane. And I'd go down there and work press, and I'd go do a lecture and a workshop and then work press the rest of the time. And he took real good care of me anytime I went down there. He flew me in nice, gave me a nice room, set me up nice, paid me well from when I was down there. Of course, I always donated the money back to him, but I enjoyed it because I just had so much fun. But yeah, Steve and I had many, many discussions. The only thing him and I ever really butted heads about was those trips he used to take out to the sand dunes. So for $3,600, you can go out. Steven will take just 12 of y'all. He won't take any more than that. He's got a limit to this. There's a particular sand dune he goes to. I'm not going to say where it is because I don't want to get into his stuff. And you can. I don't want to say spiritually connect with ET. That might not be quite the word he's using. But anyway, you can, in a way, connect with ET. Now, before anybody writes to myself or Michael, I've never done it myself. So I can't tell you if it works or if it doesn't work. So don't even bother asking me because I don't know. And well, no, because I know where this will go. I gotta watch.
Of course.
This will go into one of those. It's just anyway. We're not gonna go there. But people, find out for yourself, as I can tell you. Now I do know people have gone, and I'm not gonna tell you what they said. I'll tell you this: they had mixed reviews. How's that? And y'all can take that for what you want. But I've also heard mixed reviews of other places. A good friend of mine, Melinda Leslie, does the Sedona night scope tours down there. I've heard really good stuff about it, and I've heard people, well, I didn't see anything. Well, you maybe not. But then I've heard people, Joe, you see some stuff in them damn things, man. And these are people I actually trust. I know they're not BSing me, but whether they're aliens or spacecraft, I couldn't honestly tell you. Neither could they. But still, it's interesting stuff to hear.
Well, keep in mind, too, that sometimes when people sign up to do something like that with a certain intention, okay, and then they get there and they have the experience that they have, maybe it's not all they expected. Regardless of what we choose in respect to an experience like that, we still have our own path we have to follow. Now, there may be folks that aren't necessarily ready for that next step or that sort of awareness, and it's not anybody externally controlling that. It might literally be just their path. So, for example, where they went in to expect to have some sort of contact with extraterrestrials, they came back, I'm just throwing this out there, completely full of disappointment that what they expected didn't happen. And yet they end up growing from that disappointment. You know what I mean? They go on a different path. They get something else out of the experience than they originally intended. And yet it's exactly what they need.
And see, and that's what you got to go find out, people. You got to get out there and find out for yourselves.
Yep.
I've been in a lot of weird places. I know I get all these letters about the skin walk around. Yes, I have been there twice, and on one occasion for more than 2 weeks. But I keep telling you, I can't talk about it. I get these letters. Joe, why can't you talk about it? Well, because I'm under a disclosure agreement. But I told y'all 2 things, and you should have took heed to this. 1, I was disappointed. 2, it's not what y'all thought it was. But that's all I can say about it, because it's I'm not saying it's not something insane, because it is, but still it's not what everybody thought it was. And that's, unfortunately, guys, and nowadays you can, I could still probably get an invite, but it's I don't know. It's hard to explain without getting myself in trouble.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Joe, in the roundabout way that we're going here with this topic. It's been said that Skinwalker Ranch was very active some years ago, and that as time has gone on, the activity there has declined. Is that something that you've seen? Okay.
That is true. That is true. Now, I got to go down there in its heyday, but they brought me in because I have a particular, what they call expertise. Personally, I don't think there's experts in this field as in a way a real expert works, but still that's why I was brought in. But it's and I got to tell you, and if you're weak-minded or you really have gifts and you don't know how to control them, don't ever go.
Could that be said? Could that be said for other places?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay,
oh, yes.
So some people are walking out to, let's call it a power spot, because back in Arizona, Sedona specifically, there are these reported natural spots of power that will elevate you literally through frequency, energy, whatever the case may be. What would you say to people who are excited about getting into something like that, visiting a portal or a vortex, supposedly for the idea of self-enhancement, and yet don't really have the foundation in terms of knowledge, experience, and so forth, but they're very excited to undergo something like that? What would you say to someone like that?
I would tell them, get a little training, and well, first just kind of learn how to calm your own mind. So if you're going to walk into something, especially if it's something you don't understand or you've never dealt with before, learn how to at least control your emotions, your mind, the way you perceive things, and be ready for something other than what you think it's going to be. Now, it may be exactly what you think it's going to be, but then again, it might not. So, I went to 7 portals when I was in Sedona. I've been to Sedona twice, and I've been to 7 portals, and I've had the locals take me. So 4 of them were famous places. One is the one on the rock in the cathedral, and there's a big portal in the middle of this thing. And I'm not going to say I didn't feel anything. I did, but it's not. Okay, here again, I'm my own perfect example. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Not even close. I don't want to say I was disappointed because something did happen, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. We went to a couple other famous ones. Now, on a side note, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I want to take you to this place in the desert." So we would walk for like an hour in the freaking desert. I want to choke him. And I'm like, "Okay, dude, you better find me something good or we're going to have an issue." Now, don't get me wrong. The skies are beautiful there at night. It's a fabulous place. Even though there's rattlesnakes and scorpions walking around, it's okay, still. So we get to this spot, and you can already see the sand is weirdly shifting. So I said, just stand there. And, man, it felt like somebody plugged into an electric socket. All my hair started standing up. All my damn ponytails started twisting around. It was really creepy and weird. But it was, man, when I got off of it, I really felt I couldn't stop. I was going to go for like 4 days after that. It's just like a charger. It was like being plugged into a charger. It was great. And I don't want to say it was spiritually enlightened because it wasn't, but it was an energy. It was an energy like it, because I've been shocked a few times and stuff. It wasn't like that. It was. It's just kind of like it. You could feel it, like it worked in from your toes, and just almost like plasma. If you've ever felt plasma, and it kind of runs up your body, that's what it felt like. It was kind of weird.
That's interesting. Why do you think that these power spots are still active? Well, I don't want to say something of focus, because we seem to be pretty removed from spirituality and perhaps connecting with the earth as a whole collectively. And yet there are still these power spots out there. Now, we could say in the past that there were cultures that knew exactly how to use them. They incorporated and intertwined the vortex existence within their culture. And again, they used it responsibly. But here we are, essentially walking around with a mask on our face, and now we stumble upon something like this. What do you think the purpose of that for us today? What could we get out of that, being still somewhat asleep in respect to the knowledge that perhaps the ancients had?
Well, I guess for some people it would be kind of an awakening thing. It would make them think about other than your daily drum of life, and wearing the COVID mask and just wandering around blindly through life. Because most people, I find, really, they want to have control, but they don't. They really don't. Because most people I know could have control over their life, but they would rather be the sheeples and just be let alone. Because that way, when there's a big F up, they can blame somebody else for it.
Of course.
But see, energies like these, it's hard to deny that there's not something else going on. Now, yes, it could be some kind of weird thing with the way the earth moves, and just this particular pinpoint, there's enough things going around that and maybe enough pressures that it's caused this weird event here. But by saying that, there's one It's not too far from a river. They took me there. Matter of fact, we had a hotel with a fireplace. I love this hotel, by the way. Had a fireplace on it. Was up against the Babylon Brook. Beautiful place. Not far from there was another spot he took me. And when you sat in there, you could feel everything, and it's hard to explain. But so like you could feel the grass and the air and the wind and the sky, but the feeling just kept waving out from there. So the more it waved out, you started sensing the people who were sitting nearby you, and then you started sensing things beyond them. Then you started sensing the animals in the woods that you couldn't see, but you knew were there because you could feel them. And then it just kept rippling out. And the longer you sat there, the further it rippled out. I kind of wondered how far could it actually go, or how far could our mind understand what it was seeing? Because I only sat on it for 5 minutes, and it felt like I made it all the way back for interstate, which is like 80 miles away.
Wow.
It was a strange, because I got this sense of people's. First, I got a sense of zooming, and then I got sense of people's thoughts zooming, and then it kind of paced out after that and just settled down. But it's hard to really say. I mean, whoever wrote me that, no, we weren't on drugs that night. It's not that I've never done drugs. I'm not going to say I never have, but it's just not that particular night now. And this
No, and especially when it comes to certain medicinal plants and so forth, there's a very distinguishable difference between experiences in the waking, sober state and being under that sort of influence. It's not like, you eat something that, will cause a certain effect and then you lose all perception of everything that ever is. Yes, if you take in high enough dosage, all right, of course there's that possibility, but hopefully at that point you're using the right medicinal plant and you have somebody in a shamanic sense there to pull you back in if you go a little bit too far. But that's getting a little bit too far into what it actually is. But my thought is that just because you've worked with a medicinal plant at some point in your life doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot recall specific details in accuracy.
We when, because people write to us all the time about sightings and things that are happening to them. They say they wanted this, that, or the other thing. And sometimes some of the drugs you kind of wonder.
There are the ones that make you unconscious.
But even some of those, like a guy wrote into us one day. He was tripping on LSD. Actually, he was tripping on shrooms, not LSD. And I just wanted to distinguish because there's a difference. But he's like, Joe, I know this happened. He said, but because I was on the shrooms, I just question it all the time. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. I said, I hate using hypnosis. I said, but come by and see me. And I said, we'll put you under and see what we can see. We'll remove the effects of the drugs, and then you can see what was there. Because we did this for somebody else one time, and it turned out to be cockroaches. Freaked them out really bad too.
Wow.
They went into this weird. Oh man, it was crazy. But in this case, it turned out to be what they thought it was. And he was like, well, so it was real. I said, yeah. And I said, apparently you were just relaxed enough that your brain recorded it. I said, instead of wiping it out, I said, you must have been relaxed enough that whatever it was decided, okay, well, he's not really having a problem with this, so we can let him remember. Because that's usually what happens when people start remembering stuff like that anyway. It's, because anything that you're messing with that can wipe your memory and then let you remember anyway, there's a reason for it. I just figured in his case, he was relaxed. And he said he wasn't freaking out when he seen him. He was like, I wanted to freak out. And I was like, man, but this is so wild that I can actually see these things. He went off in this like 5-minute rant in his brain. he said, I really knew I was high then, Joe.
That's funny.
He said, I'm watching this, knowing this is happening, and going and rant in my brain. He said, I don't know if it's some kind of mechanism kicking in to save me or something else. I was like, I have no idea. Kimberly, what about Michael? What? Oh, you can save that question for later in the show. How's that? Yes. She wanted to know if you're married.
No, I'm not at all.
No, right. No, before y'all start writing.
No wedding ring anyway. A couple other eclectic ones that are kind of cool, but yeah, anyway. Yes, very quickly, I wanted to ask you, Joe, bringing it back to the portals. Okay, so there have been many instances where people talk about differing intensities in some of these portals or vortexes. And oftentimes you hear that they maybe even on their property that they live on. And I'll give you an example. And my question really to you is, and of course you can steer away from our initial topic there as we need to, things coming in and out of these portals, okay, perhaps acting as gateways. Now, when I was much younger, and please stop me if I've told you this story because I don't recall, I was with my mother and we lived down in southern Connecticut, and she had a couple elderly ladies who were friends. They ran a place called the Hope House or something along those lines. It was a healing center. People would come in, do all sorts of spiritual activity, metaphysical stuff. Okay. So this is just to paint the scene. This is what this was. Now, their property despite them both being in their later 80s, early 90s, was lavish, gorgeous gardens, just absolutely beautiful. And, they had all sorts of different architecture to it in terms of, the tiering and everything, just to paint a picture. Now, they knew that they had, or believed they had, a vortex on their property, and that this was something that helped fuel some of the growth and energy in their gardens and in their personal lives. Now, one morning they got up to find that the entire garden was destroyed. Okay. Long story short, this is what I was told by my mother, who we had actually gone, we were going to plan on going and seeing them, and she had called them up, and this was the latest breaking news from these women. They said something came out of the vortex and literally destroyed all of our flowers. Now we have to take certain precautions and undergo a few practices to seal off the vortex. They had to do something along those lines and then restore the garden, which they did, but it took them quite some time, and they never really fully reopened to the public in respect to being able to view the garden. So coming back to my original question for you, Joe, what are your thoughts on particular energies entering and exiting these places of power or portals to perhaps wreak havoc in a negative sense on the physical?
Well, it's an interesting question, because there's a couple of things that this could actually be. So maybe if the portal's crossing into another dimension, another plane or something like that, maybe something from that side could access it. But I would think more than likely it would be some type of cleansing. What I mean by that is, say somebody we knew that was angry. No, I'm not going to use him for example. Donald Trump. Okay, we'll use him. Let's say that Donald Trump stood in one of these vortexes after his 3 years or 4 years of just nonstop hating. Okay, let's just say he did that, and then he came out feeling like, oh my God, I feel okay. But where did that go? Did that go into the portal? So, like, if you stepped in behind him, would you inherit that, or someone else, or could it be dispersed amongst the places and people could share in it? But it would still be some kind of not positive experience. I don't want to say necessarily it would be negative, but it would definitely not be positive. I don't know how you can be positive and not be negative, but I'm sure there could be some neutral experience in there. But I've wondered about that before, because every now and then I'll see somebody who gets some of these, get out and they're like, wow. And you can see it in their face. I mean, it's just like relief. And they're all like, oh yeah, there's some spots in Arkansas like that. And so you wonder, I mean, did it dissipate into the air? Did it dissipate into the portal? Where did all of this bound stress, all this anger, all this hostility, where did it go? It had to go somewhere. Now, I guess it could have just dissipated into the atmosphere, but when you're standing in the portal, I feel more like the portal itself is absorbing it. And maybe it's strong enough to dissipate it, but maybe it only dissipates it to a point and it lets everybody else share in it to get rid of it. It's a hard thing to say, and you still can't rule out that something on the other side could be getting through, because we don't know what's on the other side.
That's true. We have no idea definitively what it is that we would encounter. And also keep in mind that it's possible, and has been proposed, that we shift timelines all the time, maybe moment to moment. So perhaps when you're in that state, when Donald Trump is standing in the portal and releasing all of this, he's actually switching timelines to one that seems more conducive to his higher vision of what he chooses to experience at that moment. So maybe, in essence, that character or all those feelings never really go anywhere. We just kind of switch perception, the way that, you might take a right angle and now you're facing this direction.
It's quite possible. You see what I'm saying? There's just so many places you can go with this. And well, because
all conjecture.
I was talking with Neil deGrasse Tyson about time travel one time, and we got into the conversation. And I said, well, Neil, I said, I understand. I said, so if I travel backwards in time, I don't exist in this timeline, right? He said, no, yeah. I said, no, I agree. I said, yeah, because I'm out of this timeline because I left it. So when I come back, I can't actually come back from where I left from because it doesn't exist anymore. So that creates a problem, right? I want to come home to my family, my kids. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not working for me. So I said, it's got to be some way to leave the point, travel wherever, forward or backward, and then come back to where you started. Now, for some reason, people believe if you travel in the future, you can come back to where you started from. But if you travel in the past, you can't. So I'm kind of like, okay. And I've had this conversation. I can't even tell you how many physicists I've had this conversation, including Stan Freeman. Actually, about 30 of them by now. And I've given them headaches. They've given me headaches. The problem with all this is we don't know because none of us done it yet. So if I throw Michael back in time, I'll put a time spell on his ass, send him back 500 years, and he figures out a way to come back. Is he coming back to here? Or is he coming back to an alternate timeline? Because more than likely, he's coming back to an alternate timeline. The really scary part is he could already be in that timeline. So what happens when you run into yourself?
I don't think that the paradox is really what we think it is.
I don't either. I don't think it'll blow up.
No, I don't think so. And in fact, as I've talked about the Montauk Project before, I think it was Duncan Cameron who had mentioned that he actually visited a different version of himself in time. So, if that is possible and that the grandfather paradox doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form, or on the personal level, that's really interesting. And again, leads more into the way of just timelines existing in and of their own right, perhaps being influenced by outside timelines, perhaps not. It's hard to tell because it's really difficult to measure.
Well, you know what? I bet you in a way, timelines are like dimensions. The strings that are next to each other are probably really close to the one you leave. I mean, almost identical. Maybe you got a different colored eye. Maybe you only got one kid. Maybe it could be maybe you just wear pink shoes instead of red ones. Who knows? It could be something subtle. But of course, the further you get away in those lines, the more it's going to change, the more you're going to become someone different. A personality that you may have thought of one time a long time ago, or maybe something that happens in the future that changed you for some reason or another. But those timelines would probably be further apart. They would probably kind of alien to you because, it's just not close to who you are now. But still, it would still be you in retrospect. It would still be you.
Or it's possible that, when people say, look at somebody on the street, I've mentioned this, I think, and then realize that you're actually looking at yourself in a different incarnation, in a different experience. If we're traveling on different timelines, it's very possible that if I was, let's say, Napoleon, as we know him on this timeline in a past life or a different incarnation, I could very much go to that. And of course, I would be completely unrecognizable to myself in the way that I've left. So perhaps the consciousness, look at something like the Body Snatchers, wherein, souls are kind of jumping from body to body and still holding some sort of energetic signature within themselves, being in these other bodies. I've always thought that was a very interesting concept, and I won't be embarrassed to say that I used to sit in grade school. I'm not talking middle school, like elementary school. I was sitting in elementary school looking at people saying, I wonder what it would be like if all of a sudden I closed my eyes and opened them again and I was in that person's body. What would I do? Knowing that I was there. I think that people have had that ability, and I think that that side of ourselves is probably more traversable than we realize. It's just a matter of breaking through certain barriers, and unfortunately, because of where we are in our evolution, we would have to use force, more or less. Now, if we waited a couple hundred years, maybe that wouldn't be the case. But as it stands and as it has stood, in terms of what people have done on this level, they've had to use force and extreme trauma to achieve that sort of thing.
Yeah, you can achieve it through dream weaving, but it's
I believe that too.
From where we are today, even someone who's talented, that really is a talented empath or telepathic or both, even they were still going to have some trouble with it because there's going to be things in there we just don't understand. There's going to be images we see that could be filtered in from other dimensions or from other timelines that may not fit with a particular image that you're looking for. So all of that can change. And it always, because people get mad at me in the UFO, in the ghost world all the time, because I always tell them ghosts are dimensional bleed through. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? I said, they're just someone from another dimension. It's like your daddy. He lived. I said, I'm going to tell you something. This is why when you see someone after death, after they die and they come to your room or something and you see them and there's something just not quite, maybe their hair's blonde instead of red or brown or they're dressed funny or something. It's because you're seeing someone who's alive in the other timeline. You're actually, the stress of you has made the veil so thin that it lets you look through someone else's eyes for a moment. And I bet you, I'm not saying all ghosts, but I bet you a lot of ghosts will bleed through. Because or especially the ones that are caught in loops. I bet you a lot of those will bleed through. I'm not saying they all are before you start writing to Michael, because I'm just going to extra email out. So don't even bother writing to me about it. But it is kind of a strange thing. And then the reincarnation people really hate me now, Because, I'm like, well, wait. I said, if we have multiple dimensions, what the hell we need reincarnation for? And they're like, well, Joe, we got to learn
Mm.
reincarnation. I said, okay, well, let's stop for a minute. I said, so let's say for argument's sake, there's a 5 billion of me out there, okay, and then we all die. I said, don't we all just snap back to the same Joe? I said, there is no lessons to learn. I just learned every lesson there was in the universe in one damn time. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
confused. I said, what the hell I need reincarnation for? I said, this is really confusing people.
Well, that's really interesting you bring that up, because this is something I've always wondered about. And when I say always, probably within the last 15 years, to be honest with you, this thought has come into my mind. Now, let's put it this way. Okay, the way that I envision it, and I know it's incredibly limited, but right now this is the best I can do. I'm looking at every possibility in front of me the way you might look at the strings inside of a piano. Okay, let's say each one of these strings represents a timeline that you have lived. Okay, so you're looking on sort of an eagle eye view of every existence you've ever had in the physical. Now, there may be many variables as to why you choose one particular timeline over another, but in the end, I picture it as like a marble, okay, of glowing light. And as soon as you put this marble, which may represent consciousness, onto that timeline, it begins to vibrate. And perhaps it vibrates some of the other timelines around it, so there's a continuity. But in that moment, your consciousness is locked and fixed, for all intents and purposes, on that one particular timeline, for the reason that that's what you wanted to experience. So, it's a very difficult philosophy to get into, but that's the best way I can describe what I kind of see. And I know it's very simplified. There's much more to it, I'm sure.
Well, timelines are like that. I mean, we talk about string because that's, when you get into string theory, but still, you've got to have something going along. There's strings, whatever people want to call them, veils, it doesn't really matter. They've got to be layered and they've got to be stacked alongside each other for them all to exist, which, of course, for us means as time travelers or dimensional travelers, we should be able to hop, skip around them and cross at least some of them anyway. I don't know how far we could travel off skew to say without something weird happening to us or something else. And again, to Mark, when you asked us that question a minute ago, no, Mark, I don't think so. If Michael and I were time traveling, what was that old show? What was that stupid show when they used to go
Quantum Leap?
No, not that. That was a good one too. But no, it was the other one, Sliders. That's what it was.
Oh, Sliders.
Oh yeah,
yes.
when they would just hop smacking around from the dimension to dimension. I don't think if you meet yourself in a dimension, it's going to cause the universe to end. I don't even think there's going to be an explosion. I actually think your other self would be going, "What the hell are you doing here? And are you really me? Can you answer a couple of questions? Is your timeline ahead of mine or behind mine? I mean, you might actually get some insights into your life here." But still, I don't think it's going to be the end of the universe. I don't think you both should stay there. I don't know if it's going to cause any long-term damage or not, but I don't, for whatever reason, you probably shouldn't become best friends. But still, I don't think it's going to be the end of the universe. I think it'll just be two of y'all existing in the same timeline. So one timeline won't have any of you in it, whichever one that might be. You don't know what kind of harm that's going to cause or what kind of good that's going to cause, for that matter. You miss it might cause some good stuff. You never know. But whatever it is, it's going to change it. And if two of y'all exist in the same line, that's going to change something. And somehow, because, the new you might meet your future wife and say, hey, you know what? She's my wife now. I knew she was coming ahead of time.
Well, that'd be causing a little bit of conflict there, some friction amongst yourself.
Yeah, so, and you'd be, in fighting, because you'd be fighting with yourself, and then you could even argue with yourself because you'd already know what the damn answer was. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, how would that end up, with fisticuffs?
No, Christopher, I don't agree. I don't, Christopher. I don't think the world's coming to an end if you meet yourself. It just doesn't make sense, because somewhere throughout the universe, some weird accident's going to happen, and one of us are going to meet the other one. Yeah, it might not be us, but it could be anybody, and sooner or later it's going to happen. And so far, the universe is 15 billion, 14 billion years old, and it hasn't blown up yet. Maybe that's what happened to the old universe that this one replaced, but this one's, this one's going good. So let's not curse it now, man. Come on.
Well, do you think that time travel is a natural experience for the human being?
I think in a way for some human beings it will be. I don't. The problem is most humans I meet aren't even ready for like telepathic abilities, much less altered realities. And you're gonna have to have a special kind of brain to really keep. In other words, you're gonna have to keep yourself anchored somewhere for your own sanity.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to have a pretty strong brain to be able to keep yourself anchored wherever. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in your timeline. It could be on whatever you're traveling on. It just somewhere you've got to keep your brain anchored so that it's not wandering around and just turning into Swiss cheese somewhere. But
There's got to be some lock to the timeline that you've left to. I think this is what they found when they did the Philadelphia experiment. That was the issue, that these guys that were on the ship, they weren't locked to the time. So unfortunately, that's what happened. And of course, the subsequent research that was brought about by John von Neumann afterwards was to exactly figure out why it was so deadly for a human being to enter another dimension or to time travel in that respect. So, I mean, listen, the possibility is there. This is what's so hard about this field. The possibility is there that they've already done some of this stuff that we're just talking about. You know what I mean? You say, oh, maybe, but there might be some point that it's already been executed, and there's lots of information about it.
If you ask the average human that has any, how can I say this politely? If you've asked any human that has any other than normal experience in their life, they will tell you at some time in their life they feel like maybe something shifted. Some people want to call it walk-in, some people want to call it other things, but they feel like something was a little bit different or something was off for whatever reason. You know, some people call it the Matrix. I really don't know what it is, but I would imagine throughout history, either through accident or by design, our timelines have been shifted.
Yes.
And you know, we may be the lucky ones. People talk about how it sucks on this planet, but we might be the lucky guys. I mean, and you know, Hitler might have actually won the war, and there won't be nobody but white people left on the planet goose stepping. I mean, you know, people don't stop to think about these kind of things in other dimensions. And in other dimensions, this is going on. You know, there's places where Mussolini rules, where Hitler rules, where, you know, the Russians rule, where the Romans conquered way back then and still even have it today. Same thing with the Greeks. Pretty much anybody who's ruled on this planet probably is ruling in some other dimension. So that those kind of things are, it's you got to stop and think about that. And I think those are the ones that would be further away from our timeline. In our dimension, in our timeline, I think the ones that are very close to us are, again, a lot like this one, for whatever little differences they may, you know, maybe Hillary won the last election or something like that. Maybe Michelle won instead of Obama, you know, maybe she ran instead of him. I mean, it could be a little subtle, and that's not so much subtle, but it could be little things like that. Or, you know, like, again, like I said, you got green eyes instead of brown eyes. It could really be something that's subtle, and everything else still be exactly the same. So,
which may change your entire life and the entire experience that you have. Yes. I really do believe that there is some sort of agreement or soul contract that people talk about before you incarnate, to at least have these benchmarks along the way. So an opportunity will present itself to you. At that point in your awareness as a human being, you make the decision of what's preferable or not. But if you were to follow that, however difficult that may seem, you are reaching your highest vision of yourself. I think we come in with that intention. Not always executed properly, but you know.
Well, no, we probably do come in with that intention. At least the people coming in from the middle realms are high. I do believe that. Hey, Joshua, how you doing? I really do think that. Now, I'm sure there's, just like in everything else, there's a dark to everything. So I'm sure we've got that coming in as well on whatever levels. And I'm sure if you, like in Quantum Leap, when they were time traveling, there was always something dark traveling with them. Something trying to keep pace with them or knock them out of sync or whatever. Yep. So I'm sure that's going to be true. And that's because dark and light can't exist without each other. People are always like, well, we got to have peace and we got to have love. And we do. We need to have all of that. But unfortunately, people, the light can't exist without the dark and the dark can't exist without the light. So, and people always tell me, you know, this cracks me up sometimes. I love this. So people tell me how light's conquering. I said, really? I said, have you ever looked in the universe? And like, yeah, I said, you do realize the universe is 98% dark, right? Only 2% light. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I said, sometimes the light is getting snuffed out because it's dying. I said, but there are new ones being born. I said, so right now it is clicking forward a little bit. I said, maybe in 1 billion years, it might be 3%. I said, but in the end, the universe will blow up before the light ever makes any major impact.
Well, a lot of people think of light. We talk about peace, love, and light, and they think of the physical example of light, which is a great representative for you to work with in your mind to have something visual. But that is not necessarily what you're looking at. For example, if you had your spiritual eyes out, let's say you had no body, people do report in NEDs that, NDEs that they can still see light, but it's like this light comes from within whatever object that they're viewing. It's not that something external, and there's more of an emotion or a feeling associated with it rather than a tactile sense of belonging there. And I think that's very interesting. I think really when you get to it, you have lots of filters in front of you that protect you in many different ways from certain perceptions for certain reasons. And as you consciously strip off those layers, you see a little bit more and a little bit more until finally one time, and this might take many incarnations, many, many years to achieve, you start seeing the root of what's actually in front of us, which is probably vibration and frequency. What that might look like, I don't know. But I think the idea, the concept that was in the Matrix is very interesting. That, perhaps, and I don't necessarily think that the way that they're describing the Matrix is what we're living in, but I think that there might be some similarities there. I thought that was really well displayed in terms of concept, and I think that might be applicable to our realistic world here.
In some ways, it is applicable to our real world experience, because in some ways, it's like that for us. We are being used for whatever reason you want to call it, and we are being recycled in a lot of ways, especially if you believe in reincarnation. So if you believe in reincarnation, then you believe that any race for that matter, is being recycled. But then the problem comes in when you start talking about reincarnation. What happens with the aliens that live 1 million, 5 million, 1 billion years? So how do they even reincarnate? They would be so far beyond what anything we know of is that I don't even know how they would reincarnate. It would be like a whole different thing. So it's weird, because some ways I want to believe in reincarnation, and in some ways I want to think it's something else, because I've got too many people, because of hypnosis, where I've got people describing the moment of birth and the moment of death identically. And it weirds me out. It really weirds me out. And so they'll describe it, the moment of birth as a white flashlight, a tunnel, and then people surrounding him, and then all of a sudden they're alive. And then the same thing when they're dead, it's like there's something, and then there's light, and then all of a sudden there's people standing around you. Again, well, as far as you know, because they always describe it the same way, loved ones. Well, when you die, you might just be instantly reincarnated. So that would really screw you, wouldn't it? I mean, because too many people describe it, and maybe for some people that's the way it works, because they're wherever they are in their evolutionary span, and they don't need to go hang out on the other side. They just need to keep on the same track. And then there's the other problem. So let's say you decide to take a 25,000 year break and come back. That's going to be hard.
Why?
Because you're not going to have any idea of because look at just 500 years ago. Try to take someone today and put them back 500 years ago, or try to take someone from 500 years ago and put them in today's society. It's a way of thinking, in a rigid way of thinking. So you're progressing. If you miss 25,000 years of human evolution, your brain, when it comes back, is going to be kind of like, it's not going to be designed for the way everything's thinking and moving that way. I'm really thinking people probably are limited to how long they can stay on the other side because of the loss of progression, because we're a society that moves at a very fast rate. And I've always wondered, because I always thought, okay, well, you can just come back and start, however, because you're reborn, you learn everything, right? But that only makes sense because if there's some kind of progressive DNA, because people forget half of everything we are is in our DNA. Half of your personality comes from your DNA. It's built into you. So if you've missed 25,000 years of that, then there's going to be something missing in your soul when you come back.
Well, I mean, do you think that what you're talking about here might assume some linearity even on the other side?
It might. It's just one of the things you got to wonder about, because people talk about, oh, well, I don't want to come back for 10 or 15,000 years. I'm like, why? I mean, I understand a bad life, but that's a long time to be out of sync with everything. And obviously, if you're on the other side, you're probably not watching what's going on this side. I don't even think it's allowed. So you're probably out of whack with it. You're probably looking like, the reason that it's not allowed is because too many people would try to interfere with their children's lives and shit. More than likely, most ancient scholars believe that you lose possession of those thoughts when you cross over. So that because for a lot of people it would be agony if they knew their kids, if they're there and they couldn't do anything for them. So those thoughts have to be purged in some shape, form, or fashion, or it would literally drive those people crazy. So we know you're not holding on to a lot of what you are from this world. It must just be your basic instincts and nothing else. And then whatever you are in that world or on the other side is probably something entirely different. It's probably just another incarnation. It may even be a physical life, just in a different form.
Well, I mean, you mentioned any sort of extraterrestrial that may live well beyond what we're used to in respect to years here. But my question there is, do those extraterrestrials perceive the time, the 1 billion years that they're alive, the same way that we might perceive 1 billion years? Again, I think there's an assumption of linearity here somewhere that, again, this is hard to talk about because we're talking about notions outside of our fields of perception and what we know and are familiar with. So, it's interesting to talk about and think about at the very least.
Well, Chris, if you want to pop in the chat room, feel free, man. Yeah, y'all can get in the conversation. We don't mind. It's hard. It's just hard to put in. It's really hard to put in context because there's nothing physical to hang on to. There's nothing that you can really see or taste or smell. Because when we were talking earlier, I got to thinking, most things that affect us in the universe are invisible in waves. You can't see them. Even radiation, things that will melt us and kill us, you can't even see them. So when we talk about light, it's not even a proper word for what's going on in the universe.
Correct.
Yes, I mean, there is physical light out there, and it does comprise about 2% of the universe, but maybe even 4 now, but the waves comprise more of that. Now, what they are and whether they're, good, bad, or indifferent, that's for anybody's argument there, but they are out there, and they are changing our perceptions of things and the way we act and the way we are. It's like when people find out they got a reptilian section in their brain, and they instantly go, "What? No way, Joe, you lying to me?" I said, "No, I'm not lying to you." I said, "You got a reptilian section in your brain." "No, we can't. We're animals." I'm like, "Yeah, we are animals, but we do have a reptilian section." Oh, they get all mad with me, want to cuss at me and stuff. I had a freaking doctor. This was so funny. This is a doctor. So he's on the show, and he's going on and on. "No, Joe, we don't have." I said, "Dude," I said, "would you like me to send you the research on it just so you can catch up?" I said, "because you're scaring me that you're doctoring people and you don't know this, man." I said, "You ain't never doctoring me. I'm telling you now." And he's like, "No. And then he's reading the article. I sent him the Harvard article, actually. He's like, "Son of a bitch, I didn't know that." He said, "I'm not a brain surgeon, so it wasn't something I came across." He said, "So it is the driving force in what humans are." I said, "It's part of the drive." I said, "But without it, we would be way more sheeples than we are today." I said, "Without that little reptilian kick, we'd all be going, meh."
You may very well be right about that, Joe. I think that we're built very deliberately, and I think that there are many facets of ourselves that we just really haven't tapped into in respect to our own development and how that might benefit us. Now, when I mentioned or asked you, do you think that time travel is part of the human experience? If you look at somebody like Drunvalo Melchizedek, who has been, supporting sacred geometry and his flower of life information for a very, very long time. One of the things that he mentioned as the core of his teachings was that this tetrahedron, which is in our arc field in respect to sacred geometry, if you're able to access that, visualize it, and then get them to spin again, okay, counter to each other, you're actually now engaging what's the word I'm looking for? An ancient part of yourself that we once had, where these things were spinning in an arc field, and as a result, it brings in prana or life force energy from the top and the bottom, meeting into those who are familiar with like Qigong and Tai Chi, the Dan Tian, which is just below the belly button. Now, the significance of this is that we see some of this action in our present day with some of the monks who have this mind over matter control, but they'll talk about how they've activated certain shapes within their auric field to allow them to have more stamina or exert a specific trait over physicality. So I don't know how much we actually had in the past. I think there's much more than we have today, at least in the way of this information. But that being said, this tetrahedron, when it was activated, a byproduct of that, or something that you could very readily do, was to physically travel from location to location. Now, I think Drunvalo had mentioned, and it's been some years since I've read his work, but I think he mentioned that the specific reason that we were working with these two tetrahedrons was for travel within the timeline. He said that it's possible to go outside the timeline and perhaps do something more with future or the past, but the whole point of this particular construct within our arc field is simply to move from one place to another physically without the use of an automobile or an airplane or anything like that. So appearing from one place right into the next instantaneously. Now, if that's where we're going, Joe, this is going to be a very interesting world. And of course, we would have to be ready to consciously embody something like that. I think that's a very heavy responsibility to be able to do something like that. And before that happens, I think the majority of people will probably have to have some control over their thinking and their thoughts in general.
Well, you're gonna have to have an understanding from telekinesis for sure if you're going to be traveling through, especially if you're doing it through a form of thought. You're going to definitely have to have a understanding of telekinesis. But the real problems that I foresee is you're going to get tricked long before you learn how to do it. And what I mean by that is we're already working on teleportation. within the next 100 years, teleportation will just be like everything else on the planet, just be another form of travel. So if you have it, you have no need to develop the ability. One thing I've watched humans do over the years, when I was younger, there were a lot more people on the planet trying to develop psychic abilities than there are today. Even there are still some groups around, and some functioning college groups that are around, and two military groups. The amount of groups has shrunk tenfold, maybe even 50-fold. So because of the way life has become so in your face and you're always connected, there's a lot of things you just don't need anymore. You don't need as much your telepathic abilities as much as you used to. There's a lot of things that are already set out and laid out for most humans. Now, I'm not talking about every day. Some of us just want to develop the ability for the ability to understand what you can do with it. But most people will settle for the easy route because it takes a little effort to develop a really strong psychic ability. And you can't get, you can't have a weak personality because you'll never develop it. You'll always think less of yourself and you can't do it. And a lot of times the first time it'll manifest in a hard way will either because you're very angry or very happy. But either way, it's enough energy to really see it for the first time if you've really been exercising your brain to do it. But so many other people are just going to say, well, why do I need to learn that shit? Watch this. Up in France. Up, I'm in Berlin. Up, I'm in London. Oh, wait, I'm on the moon, people. What the hell? What? Oh, you know what? I'm going to Mars next. It's just, what I'm saying is I've watched humans too long now. We'll always take the easy route. And I agree with you, Mike. I do think eventually all these abilities will be, but I think without the technology we have today, the abilities would have developed at a much faster rate. But because we have these technologies, it's going to slow it down exponentially, which I guess in a way is probably a good thing, because most humans I know don't need to know telekinesis. They're allowed to kill their husband or wife just because they got angry. Oh, did I give you an ambulance? Oh shit, I killed my own man. or with politics, every president on the planet would be dead at least 3 times.
Well, that's where the responsibility comes in, for sure.
Yes, exactly. So we know, maybe in 1,000,000 years we might be there, and maybe, that's not a fair statement. If a world leader, whoever this may be, whatever color, whatever sex, whatever they may be, if they can truly come in and unite the planet as one planet and as a harmonious planet working in one direction, we can cure everything on the planet in a matter of years and be far beyond where we are technologically and psychologically in ways that we've never thought of. But right now we're too, and it's done by design. They keep us fighting with each other so we don't develop these abilities and we don't ask questions. And when most humans want to get out there, I mean, I was just a kid in the 60s, but most of my friends who grew up in the 60s will tell you they were trying all kind of stuff to develop this. And it was a common thing amongst the whole population. And it was even with the not with the Z Geners, with the what the hell are they? Not the baby boomers, the X Geners. It was the same with the X Geners, but when you get into the millennials, it cuts by about half. When you get into Z Gen, it cuts even more by another half. And it's just like the Z Gen is really uninterested in most of this stuff at all. They just don't have an interest in it. They would rather watch TikTok. It's more fun and it's more entertaining and it don't take any thought. And unfortunately, today we've been moving into a direction where we need to use lessons. I watch people all the time. Friends of mine get lost in places they used to know by heart because they're always relying on their nav system. I said, how'd you get lost in the city of New Orleans? He said, well, I was using my nav and it wasn't working. I said, dude, you grew up in New Orleans, right, man? I said, every city, every street. Well, I've forgotten now. I said, well, you know what? I'm like, dude, come on. So, and don't people, I'm not hating. I use my nav too, but a lot of times I don't because I know where I'm going, but still, you should always be paying attention to where you are. You should always be marking. You never know when your phone's not going to work or when the EMP pulse is going to come or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just,
the technology today is very, very much a crutch for those growing up. And, it's tough because you have to educate your kids now about what they have in front of them with their iPads and the telephones that we're constantly on. I mean, I never used to really work with a phone. I'd have it for texting and occasionally I'd look something up online. I love it. Occasionally I'd look something up, but by and large I use it as a regular telephone, and that was for years. It was only when I actually started working with the social media in respect to the promotion of Dark Hour Paranormal that I became so involved in this little freaking computer that I have. But now it's like much more than my daily planner. It's my contacts, it's everything.
Yeah.
I set shows up on the thing, and I have to explain to my kids why my face is buried in my phone as often as it is. And I have to show them and say, listen, I'm over here playing games. I'm working. So we can use these things for the proper ways that, perhaps we should, rather than them just being entertainment, which they are as well.
No,
But it's got to be tough for kids these days growing up with all of these opportunities and the fact that everything is so easy that essentially you really don't have to think for yourself. That's dangerous.
Yeah, no, it is great though, because I love it when my kids give me shit. I'm like, really? Oh, you think I'm wrong? Look it up on your phone. They're like, I said, don't. Just look it up. I said, I don't want to argue with you. Look it up on your phone. They're like, oh, man's right. Shit. I'm teaching them, don't start arguments. You can't win because, people today it's easy. We're online. We got guests. We got people calling in and stuff. And I'm like tonight. And I'm like, people, look it up. Because, I've like 80 different time travel things sent to us while we've been talking. I said, guys, the sad part is I've read every one y'all sent me before. That's no need for me to read them. I'm very well versed in time travel. And the problem with time travel for us today is it can happen in a lot of different ways. And it's not that they can't be paradoxes. They can be, but I don't think for a lot of times it's not going to be what people think. And I do think we can get knocked out of our own timeline, unfortunately. But
yes.
And the only thing, if you get knocked out of your timeline, I can see is if you have kids, they're probably going to disappear. But let's be honest about this now. If you leave your timeline, it said, so you've got kids. So Michael and I leave, the kids they're going to be alive, even if we go back in time. Because as long as I think we're still alive, whatever timeline we're in, they're going to probably still exist. Now, if we get knocked out of the timelines completely, that's going to probably change stuff. Or if you get sent too far where I guess you're not, however, connected. Spiritual is a bad word for this.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah, these are more like some type of energy that crosses through us. Your spirit's probably tied into whoever sent me that question, but it's got to be more than that, because there's got to be some kind of interlocking, interlaying, crossing over energy that allows everything to connect to each other. Somebody told me about psychic abilities, was you're thinking through the air as far as we can see, but we don't know what kind of fields are out there that our minds are connected to that's allowing us to connect. It's like water. I mean, you put your finger in water and put electricity on the side and it travels through. So it's the same thing. We just don't know what medium, it's how we're picking it up. And I've noticed, as far as I can tell, good psychics have no range. There doesn't seem to be any range involved. It's now I know people Kirby, don't get me wrong. People can limit themselves because they believe that there is a range. Because you remember, this has a lot to do with what you believed in. So it's why kids manifest these abilities so much earlier, because they're not being taught not to believe. Unfortunately, adults get caught up in this being an adult thing, and they forget some of the weird stuff that happens to them, some of the stuff they've done when they were young, like knowing who's at the door, knowing who's at the phone, knowing when something's getting ready to happen. You want to forget that because you don't want to think that's real. I don't know why you don't want to think it's real, but a lot of people don't. They want to live ordinary lives with no ruckus, no muckus, especially especially right now with the COVID. People just want to be, I hate to use this word, safe. And it's a shame because this was a perfect time for people to be developing their psychic abilities or their dream weaving, because everybody's home. You know where people are. You can get in their heads easier. Now, by saying that, I do believe you should always ask permission, even though I haven't always asked permission, but you should. Well, people, because sometimes it just happens. I tried to figure something out when I was young. I couldn't figure this out. Every now and then I'll meet someone and I'll see like 15 years of their life, and I'll just blurt it out and tell them. And so far, every time I've done it, it's been 100%. Doesn't even where it's like I was reading it off a ledger somebody gave me that's watched this happen. It's a really weird thing, and I've often wondered, what is it that kicks that in? What am I connecting to that allows me to see that? Because for me, it's like a reel of the person's life, I guess is the best way to explain it. So
are you connecting with their energy, do you think?
I think, but it's got to be rolled. Somehow it rolls into their future and then rolls back so I can see. It's like, so I meet them and then it blasts 15 years forward and it stops. And then it like fades backwards so I can witness the whole thing coming back. It's like chunks of it. It's I don't know how to explain. It's weird. And I've seen that, I seen when my dad died, I actually wrote that down. All this stuff I actually write down. And sometimes I'll even mention it on shows and on there. So that way when it happens, there's actually witness to it.
That's cool.
But you know what's weird is I didn't meet anybody who predicted 9/11. And I know people all the time say
Mhm.
after the fact they have, but in honesty, there was no anything anywhere. If you do a search pre 9/11, no one got that one. Now, I know a contactee group who told me for 3 weeks before it happened that they were antsy and jumpy, like something was going to happen, but they just thought it was alien or something. They didn't really think it was this. And I don't even know if that's what was making them antsy, but they were antsy a couple of weeks, but that was it. Nobody else predicted anything. And then everybody said, oh, Notre Dame. I said, no, Notre Dame didn't predict it either. I wish he would have, just to add to his legend. But it just seemed like this one event that seemed to have been planned for years went unnoticed by all the psychics. And it's so to me, that would suggest something or someone was blocking it.
Yeah.
Some
Well,
higher order, yeah.
I think that there is definitely that possibility. I think that was a very big catalyst. Something happened in that time of 9/11 that's much more than what we see on the surface. A lot of people bring up this question: how come the psychics of the world didn't see these enormous events coming? Well, it's either I think it's one of two things. It was either, like you're suggesting, there is a block there, which again is very, very possible and plausible, or two, they're just not supposed to see this coming because we're supposed to experience this with those blinders to some degree because of the experience that it would give us. So there's always that possibility too. Let's say that some sort of catastrophe was going to come on Wednesday of next week. The entire planet is going to be decimated by some sort of catastrophic event. Now, if I saw this today, and, first I come to my own realization and acceptance, and then I decide to share this with you and perhaps the rest of the world, what the hell is going to happen in the next week coming up to this event? Whether it happens or not, people will go into some sort of mass hysteria and, perhaps do things that they wouldn't normally do, believing that their last day on Earth is 7 days from now. So that's an extreme example of how things can change with prior knowledge. But I think that there might be that aspect there too.
It might be. It's all this is very interesting. No, Chris. Well, yeah, we've crossed a few topics tonight. Well, we haven't talked about ghosts or aliens, actually. You keep
that's
up
true.
with
We
the
haven't.
topic. No, well, I got coming back in a couple of weeks anyway. But no, because we both host and we both do research, so it's easy for us to cross a lot of topics. That's why I like talking to him. It's always a pleasure for me when I get to talk to people who do a lot of the same stuff I do in a lot of different ways. It's like cheating doing research, guys. I don't know how to explain it to you. When I go to debate or when I go to debates, in old days I used to do a lot of them. We don't do as many these days because people are scared to debate me now. But in the old days, everybody wanted to do like the crazy astronomer guy. He's always wanted to debate me. And then I took him out one night in a college audience, and he was like, after the thing, he said, dude, you're just good, man. I said, no, I just got a team of researchers that keeps me informed on every topic I can. And I said, you got to remember, I talked to them about this. So when I say something stupid or crazy, they look at me like, Joe, you're not saying that on the air, right, dude? I'm like, what do you mean? It sounds good. No, you're not. And and I got a board of directors. No, they're serious, man. See, I missed two of them because two of them passed away just recently. But it's they have no problem. I've always been a person who like to keep people around me that won't allow me to believe my own bullshit. And this way, the research always stays clean and pure. When I went after the Betty and Barney Hill by changing the Betty and Barney Hill story, a lot of the researchers in the organization were like, you have lost your mind. So this was a big argument for 5 years. And then finally, when I said, I never gave him the full argument. So my very first appearance on Coast to Coast, I laid out the full argument. And George Norrie told me at the very beginning of the show, oh, Joe, you'll never change my mind about this. I said, that's fine. Can I go ahead and say it? He said, yeah. So I went on this 20-minute spew, and then it was dead air. I mean, look, dude, it was like, shh. And I know I heard Tom in the background go, George. And then George is like, shit, I think you changed my mind.
That's a great story.
I was like, man, he's like, it is. It's funny as hell. But because it's a much more convincing version of what went on. And it's much more along the research. Because like I tell people, I said, look, this case was 60 years ago. Things are going to change. We know more about the fields now than we did then. So we understand things differently. I said, but being so hard that you can't change. I said, there's been a couple of times as a director of the organization that I've had to come up and say, guys, we were wrong. This is what we really think went on. Because when I first was handed reins of this organization, we all thought the Greys worked for somebody else, and they were just here as little slave guys, and these other races were doing this. Then we come to find out, no, we were completely wrong. The Greys are doing the majority of abductions, even though the other two races are involved in doing abductions, but not at the rate the grays are. And come to find out, the other two races are scared of the little grays. So I'm like, what? Um, so, so you know,
Very
here
odd.
I am. I've been, you know, so here I am saying all these years, I got to get out in front of a public audience and say, hey, we were wrong. And it was so weird of a thing, because even the TV guy was like, what do you mean you're wrong? You're going to admit you were wrong? I said, well, we were wrong. I said, I can't keep saying the same bullshit because it's not right. And it's just, you know, just because we said it, we got to change it now.
Right.
And I said, we've learned that, no, what we said originally, what we thought based on evidence we had at hand then was this. I said, but now we know better. We've got way more cases. And now we got like 60,000 cases. Yeah, we see things in a whole different view because we've got a whole database to look at stuff at. We see things and patterns that we didn't see before. And thanks to Larry Hatch's OU database, not only we used it to combine with our abduction database. And what we found was there was patterns. Things shifting across the planets, moving at particular times, moving in particular areas. You could see crossings and stuff like that no one ever had done before. No one ever, and still no one's really done anything like we've done. And it really puts the field off sometimes because they're like, well, you speak so matter of fact. I said, yeah, because I got 40 years of research under my belt with over 4,000 additional researchers. I'm like, yeah, of course I do. I said these guys, and like I said, we keep 50% of all abduction criteria is top secret in the organization. The other 50% we released. And the blood type study was a big fight because when I first took it on and I realized what was going on, I'm like, this has to be made public. And they were like, no, it does not. We're the only one that knows, Joe. No one needs to know. Gives us an advantage over everybody. I said, yeah, it gives us an advantage. I said, but do you know how many more people will look at this and say, hey, I've got this. You know, we posted the 50 things that you might be an abductee. And I said, when you show these blood types, it's going to make people think and go get checked or come talk to us. I said, all of it, honestly, was so that we as an organization could find more abductees and contactees, because we realized only about 2% of the group ever comes forward. And those are usually ones in some fashion, some way or another, get involved. So once we realized that, we needed a way to find them, and that was one of the ways. And then, so people ask me all the time, do the grays dimensional? I'll tell you all this much, ladies and gentlemen. They're as much dimensional as they are extraterrestrial. How's that? Yes, they have the ability to easily move between dimensions. What they do in them, I have no idea. I'm sure there's lots of stuff we could speculate a lot, but I don't know. And I know they like to pull people out of time and hold them there. So no effective time passes on Earth while they're doing the abductions now. So they change, because of researchers, they changed the way they abducted people and the way they did their memories. As a direct, and we're the only organization that caught it in the beginning. Now everybody wants to take credit for it, but we released it 20 years ago. 25 years ago, we figured it out, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we started getting these, no missing time cases. Missing time seemed to be, and even today, there's very few missing time cases. And that's all you ever heard about in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even early 90s was missing time, and then foof. And I was like, huh? I said, I know they ain't stopped abducting people. What the hell's going on? And then we started getting these weird cases where people were being put back before they left, or only 10 minutes had passed, but yet they had 3 weeks of hair growth on them. It was unexplainable things that suggested that they had been taken for a much longer period of time. So then we realized they changed it. And then we couldn't find any cover memories anymore, or any start memories anymore. We're like, what the hell's going on? Then we realized they were using your own memories. They were looping your memories. Something mundane, something you do, like sitting on your ass watching TV, something you do all the time that you're not going to question when that memory pops up in your head. You're just going to be like, yeah, okay, I do that all the time. I probably did it that day too. And you'll just go on and you'll leave it alone. But every now and then they'll make a mistake. Like with the one lady, she was pregnant when they were taking her, and she used to stop and get a hot dog every morning. Well, they used that memory later on, like a year later. Problem was the hot dog stand was closed. So she knew she didn't stop that morning. So she knew something had happened. So every now and then we catch a break, but and we were wrong. It's another thing we changed. People, it was always cover memories. Oh, the hoot owl standing on the thing, but that wasn't true. They weren't cover memories. They were trigger memories. So when people see stuff like that, it's because they want you to remember. Because remember, they don't have to let you remember anything. They can put you right back in your bed, knocked out. You didn't have to see anything, witness anything, no memories whatsoever. They do not have to leave a memory in your head. So when you see something like that, that's a trigger memory. That's to let you know something happened. It's to make you investigate. Somewhere along the line, You showed an interest to them that you're not going to panic and freak out, and you want to be involved. So they give you a trigger memory, and then you start digging, and then from that point you keep going, and then it starts the awakening process. And once that takes over, usually most people cannot get out of the awakening process. It just takes over their freaking lives. But in those cases, that's how it works. And so now we see that. We've seen it enough times that we know what's going to happen with that kind of stuff. What do you mean Michael's an alien? Oh, you mean like Bubbles is an alien? Okay, I got you. Okay.
Well, here's a question too. I mean, you mentioned that you were wrong about something and then corrected it later. Archaeology, the community of science. I mean, just to name a couple, this is something that people do all the time. Oh, I thought it was this theory. Oh, guess what? I found out that it wasn't. And everybody says, oh, okay, so you thought, okay, but it's this. All right, great. We're going to go on this path. Why don't people get as much flack as we do when we decide to change our opinions based on the further research that we come across or any additional developments?
Because we're a rare breed in our fields. One, nobody ever changes their opinions in these fields. I've just never seen so much rigidness in two fields. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, for me, paranormal is one field. It's everything that's outside the normal is to me is all kind of interconnected in a shape, form, or fashion. But you would think that we could get past all of this, but no, we're not. We're what's that, Bruce? What do you mean we're stuck? As a human race, yeah, we are stuck. But here's on a side note, because you wrote that. Think of this, okay? If you've been alive more than 40 years on this planet, think about the repetition of television, radio, and so on. Think how many new things you have seen. I'm not talking about new TVs. I'm talking about like Captain America. We'll use that as an easy example. So it comes back from 60 years ago. Now follow Captain America today. He's still the same thing. It's still the same shows. They're just being remade. There's nothing new there. There's no new imagination. There seems to be a lack of general imagination in the planet right now. Even though we're moving technologically advanced, most of what we're doing now is just improving technologies. We're not so much inventing all that many new ones. We're just improving on older ones. Perfect example, Gorilla Glass. It was invented in the 50s. It started being used in the 90s. This DNA that's in all these shots today, this stuff was invented 20 years ago. It's just now starting to be used. So there's stuff, it's just like, maybe it's because there's too many of us. I don't know. Or maybe too many things are being handed to us too easily. But it does seem to be a general lack of new stuff. And it bothers me. Because people write to me out, you think we're at the end of our evolution because we're stagnant. I don't necessarily think we're stagnant. I just think for some reason we've slowed down some. Because a computer's still a computer. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, the phone, somebody said the other day, well, look at your phone. It's still a phone, though, people. It's a phone computer now, but it's still a computer. It's still a phone. It's not really a new technology. It's just a more advanced version of it's what it is now is it's your calculator, your camera, your phone, everything's in one. But it's still all the same technology. It's just put in one place now. So that's what I mean. It doesn't seem like, where's the next jump? Where's it's in our head and we don't have to carry anything anymore? Or where's all this VR I've been hearing about for all these years? Where's my damn flying car for that matter? I'm still pissed about that.
Russia supposedly has that under wraps, so we'll keep an eye on that.
I want my damn flying car, people. I'm hacked. I've seen them new hover car things. Yeah, it's not what I'm talking about. I want my Jetson car, damn it. Damn.
Yeah, no, I mean, God, I remember that show, The Jetsons, and thinking about how outlandish, some of those concepts were. But really, today they're not. And even back then, they may not have been. But today, for certain, in the public eye, what we know, they are more than possibilities. Now, whether they're realistic, that's another story. But it's certainly something we could do. I was just going to address this. Del Lessie asks, do you think CERN impacts temporal or psychic energy? Very good question. Does HARP?
That's another damn good question. I think both of them could.
I think so too. I think so too.
Especially because of the stuff CERN is definitely creating particles and waves, and we know HARP's punching holes in our ionosphere, so they're both working with pretty powerful wave makers. I can't see how either one of them aren't affect us in some shape, form, or fashion. Whether we can see it or not now doesn't mean we won't get some repercussion from 5 years or 10 years from now. Well, it's like the people kept telling me, well, when they crank CERN up, we're all going to die. I said, no, we're not. And they're like, yeah, Joe, we're going to die. I said, well, you know what? It'll be fast. It'll be over and I won't have to hear you. We're all going to die. And I said, I don't think we're going to die. Well, I was like the 2000 thing. My friends drove me crazy. I said, nothing's going to happen on 2000. I said, planes are not going to follow the skies. Let me explain something to you. I said, just because the calculator on the computer stopped does not mean the computer is going to stop, people.
Exactly.
I'm like, it does not work that way.
Nothing happened.
No, nothing happened. It was quite boring, actually. And then
Yes,
2012, I was with Giorgio Suklioff for 2012. He put on a big party in New Orleans. We went down to work press, and it was the end of the world party. Actually, it was a great party, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all missed out on a good 2012 party, of course. We're all still here, and I used to get in trouble for that all the time for 10 years before that, because I'm like, I said, people, you do know that the Mayan calendar is based on a 30-day 13 month, right? I said, so it's not a Gregorian calendar, which means you're going by the Gregorian. So I think it's off by about 144,000 years, which either means it happened, already, or it ain't going to happen for another 150 years. I'm like, people, calm down. It's not going to happen. Yeah, and I don't mind all this. Let's have some fun, like, Planet X and all. Planet X is a great thing. And Planet X probably existed at one time. It's probably the damn debris between Mars and Jupiter right now. But
I agree.
I can tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, it has not been seen in 6,000 years, because the Egyptians, just like the Chinese, were great astronomers, and they didn't see it. And neither did the Mayans or the Toltecs, for that matter. So it hasn't been around at least 5,000 years.
But what about, now I'll just bring this out there real quick. What about the time that was recorded where there was no moon in our sky? And I can't remember the tribe. There are a couple of them.
I remember that. Yeah, I do remember that. And which is weird. Because see, our problem is as humans have such short history. So the most you can give us is 2 million years. And really, you can only give us maybe 100,000, 200,000 years of any kind of where we got something on cave drawings and stuff like that. So we have such a short history. Now, we've all been taught the moon's been there for a couple billion years. But then nobody ever told us the moon was hollow. Now we know the moon's kind of hollow. There's something screwy with it. We know it's moving away from the Earth at 2 miles a year. So it's going to take forever to get away from us, but still it is moving away. So that does suggest that at one time it was part of us, or it had impacted us and was being rebounded. But that doesn't really, you don't really know that because we weren't here. Right. I know at one time they said it came from the Pacific Ocean. They could match the mountains on the moon to the crater to the holes in the Pacific, which may or may not be true. I don't know. I mean, I've seen lots of studies on it, but it does seem that the moon could have been something else. It could have been the ark, as far as we know.
A lot of people believe it's a satellite of some sort that, I mean, and that's possible. I mean, if it's cavernous, if it's not completely hollow, it may be cavernous. And, just like here on Earth, there may be some sort of activity within those caverns. Now, I mean, it's my belief that, we, at least in this country, know very much about that. And I believe a lot of other countries do as well. I mean, if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have somebody like General Ashed from the Israeli army telling us that we have bases on Mars, and we've been going there for quite some time.
Because somebody figured out we are Martians. So somebody figured it out.
Well,
we're going home.
Well, I mean, honestly, that is something that's come up, and not just recently. That's been floating around for a while. What is our true origin? A lot of people will talk about the extraterrestrials that perhaps have created us, and maybe there were 8 or 12 sects of these individual species that lended their DNA, and that we were created interdimensionally, and not just 1 or 2 at a time. We were created as a batch. Did this happen here on the Earth, or were we taken? Well, let's put it this way: or were certain elements taken from the Earth, whether it be DNA, whether it be minerals, and so forth, and then brought somewhere else, mixed into this energy to create this body that we have now? Because, if we don't have anything else to compare ourselves to, then we have no business saying that we are something special, and yet we do.
It's a hard thing to know for sure. I mean, the Sumerians give us the 7 creations of man pretty good, so it's hard to get away from that. And but it's the funny part for all of humanity is a common Adam and Eve story. Anywhere you go, you find this we were kicked out of wherever we were. But what it really sounds like is the Sumerians talk about it even in great detail. So they say something came here, sky people came here. And they built these great white dome cities, and in these cities they lived. But they couldn't come outside the cities. For some reason, either the air or the sun, something was toxic to them. So they created a species there. They recreated themselves so they could breathe the atmosphere and come out and work the planet. But for some reason, that species, the second version of them decided, well, you know what? we're also omnipotent super beings. Why the hell are we out here getting our hands dirty? So they created what the Sumerians call the 7 creations of man, with the very last creation being our closest descendants, but not us. They were almost identical to us. They were a little shorter than us, a little heavier than us. They knew things like how to make beer, how to procreate. They knew how to plow the fields. They knew the cycles, but they didn't understand that they were sentient. They didn't ask why they existed or how come they had to do this. They just did what they were told without recompense. Later on, the reptilians entered. Now, we all know we got a reptilian section in our brain now. The Sumerians talk about this in great detail. The reptilians came in, started stealing the women and bringing them back pregnant. The pregnant women were born. Those people were self-aware. They wanted to know why they had to plow the field. Why do we have to do this? Why did, after enough time, when there was enough of them, there was a rebellion. And that is the first creation of us. But that's not even the whole creation of us, because we know later on that, so we had the human DNA, then the reptilian DNA, and then we know later on, whenever Rh negative became part of our, is when the Greys introduced their DNA. Mm-hmm. So we know for sure, whatever the original stock was, which no one knows, plus at least 3 other races, no matter what, those 4 races are in us. So this is the real question. Isn't that the reason they're watching us? I mean,
I would think so.
If the Greys are the servants of the light beings and a billion-year-old plus race who are basically pretty just omnipotent themselves, their ships are alive, they can meld with anything. Maybe they just want to see what we're going to turn into, because one day we might surpass them. We may become the light beings 100 million years from now or a billion years from now. So then the Greys going to think, oh, shit, well, they'll kill us then, won't they? They're humans. Or it's long before then, for that matter. So, because, you know, technologically, we mimic things fast. So we catch on to things fast. So if we get hold of technologies, we start getting into deep space and really where we get our hands on real technologies, you may see us bloom. But this race today is not ready for that. We'd start killing people. We'd be fighting over resources and land. Russians would be putting things. I mean, right now, Elon Musk talking about going to Mars. Okay, I'm all for you, Elon. I want to go with you, Elon. But he's talking about going in and establishing an independent colony, not related to a government, with his own set of rules. Now, that could be a good thing, but that could be a dictatorship. So I'm not sure.
Right.
You know, and he's, you know, it's hard to say now, and we're hearing a lot of other people talking about doing this now, and so now we're listening to, we're hearing that big companies, you know, in another 10 years, Elon will have as much money as Russia does. Russia makes about $1 trillion a year. Elon's already halfway there at 500 billion. So he's well on his way to being his own small country. I mean, you think of the military, Russia's got $1 trillion. You just think what he can come up with on Mars, and he's brilliant.
I know.
And so, you know who he reminds me of is one of the mad scientists from James Bond or something, or what was the other one with the comic guy that played? Anyway, it kind of reminds me of that, like, you know, I'm
evil genius.
Yes, you know, and maybe Bill Gates will get with him and it'll get really scary.
I'm more afraid of Bill Gates than I am of Elon
everybody
Musk.
Should be scared of Bill Gates. Let's just be honest.
I'm very much more afraid of Bill Gates.
But if anybody knows about body swapping, I bet you he does, because I know for a fact that they have been developing this technology to upload your consciousness into a new body for at least 25 years that I know of. In 2000, the government had made an announcement that they were looking for ways to take a person's consciousness, put it like on a CD, and then grow a new body, not a clone, a host body. Because cloning, we don't want to get that. We've learned, I guess, through sci-fi, we don't want to do clones because of degradation. So what we've learned is just keep a bunch of DNA around, you just mix it together and you make a new body each time. And you can still genetically make it look like in size, muscle and tone, and even brain size that you want. That's all technology we have today. So getting you in there, the only thing I'm worried about, Michael, is what makes us us. Yeah, I think you can scan anybody's brain and make a copy of it. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. I think you'll be able to upload it into any hard drive and put it back into a body. I just don't know if it's going to be you.
Correct.
It'll be you in the sense that it'll know everything you ever knew, and it might even act that way. But what is it that actually makes Michael? Is that going to go in the transfer? That's what worries me. As long as that happens, I have no problem with these technologies. And according to the Greys, humans, and reptilians, they all possess that technology. They can upload their consciousness to anybody at any time, and they swap them around all the time. It's not even a big deal. But they understand something we don't. They have a different view on religion than we do, and a different view on God than we do. And they probably know the soul or the spirit or whatever you want to call it. They may even know where it resides in the consciousness. So if that's the case, yeah, you might be able to, but humans don't know that kind of shit yet. So I'm kind of thinking, man, look, people, I don't know how this is going to, because I don't want to see a bunch of zombies walking around. We're going to kill you. We're going to eat your brains. Just because, their soul's not with them. Well, I don't know, people. It just worries me. Okay. I don't want a bunch of soulless humans running around. We got enough. You see how politicians lately look. There you go. You want a bunch of them running around?
You have a good point, though, and that's a really good question. How much would that clone resemble you in respect to consciousness? It's something I've thought about, too, many times. Even if someone were to clone me and I'm standing in front of my clone, are we going to share some sort of consciousness highway the way that twins do, apparently? Or is there going to be something else there? Other than just being odd staring at myself in physical form, not in a mirror. That's a very good question, but you'd have to isolate consciousness and have that technology to do that. I think that they have been able to do this in certain respects, especially Dr. David Anderson, I think, was playing with this for a little while. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he did dabble in that compartmentalization of consciousness using frequencies. Again, just like some of the old technology that we've heard of. I mean, they were using frequencies and they'd find the right bands. And sure enough, if you enact that on the body at a certain amplitude, it creates an effect, and it creates a physical effect. Oh,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah.
No, what I was thinking about is, and what started most of this is some crazy guy in the early 90s had a microchip put in his head.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see if they could record memories and dreams. And it did. And then they could play it back, and everybody was stunned. Everybody's like, wait, what? It's on a chip.
Unreal.
It's on a chip. So it made sense to me because we know our everything in our head is electrical impulses. Mm-hmm. So it's all energy. So if that's true, that's how your chip works. It's a low voltage charge running across your chip, and it's a low voltage charge running across your brain. So it does make sense that they might be compatible. And maybe whoever actually invented the microchip, because nobody actually knows how the damn thing works, might have understood that. No, Kirby. Technically, no one actually understands why the microchip works the way it does. I'm serious, dude. Look it up for yourself. No. We understood what it was going to do when they put it together, but there's nothing that interconnects it to make it work. Yeah, so they're not exactly sure why it works, even though it does work. And now they're coming up with carbon-based chips that they grow in petri dishes that can run 100 gigs. Yeah, instead of like this one, we're running at 5Gs on this one.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, they'll be running at 100 and with no heat because it's grown from carbon. There won't be no heat involved. It'll self-cool itself. I'm like, Jesus, that's technology.
Yeah, it is.
Well, they got quantum computers now. That's serious technology too.
They do.
Thank you, Jack. Jack said, Michael and you are making my head hurt tonight.
We're doing our job then.
That's right. You should always exercise your brain. It's the most important muscle in the body.
I will say this about Elon Musk and his colonization of Mars. Okay. If he ever decides to pull the same act on the moon, I want to let everybody know that I purchased an acre parcel of moon that is mine in the 1990s. I have a certificate. So if you go ahead and build on that land, we're going to have a legal issue there, Elon Musk. I'm kidding.
What's that, Jack? Yeah, we'll start calling Pluto Nash owns a little piece on the dark side, huh?
You remember that? They were selling pieces of the moon, you know what I mean? Off this way, yeah. I should have invested in Mars.
Well, there's going to be a big argument about that. And Michael brings up a good subject because Russia and China are talking about building a base on the moon and a hotel on the moon. Several people are planning on building, now that the U.S. has got off its strategic thing, they're going to let them start building hotels in space. First one's planned to be open for 2025.
That's crazy.
I'm like, that's ambitious. But no, I think because I told this to people a long time ago. When I started hosting Wake Up USA, when I got on the radio, I talked about it long before that. But when I got on the radio and started having a real audience, I told people, I said, if you ever want to see space take off, privatize it. I said, we will leave all the rest of the countries behind. I said, China and Russia will not be able to keep up because they're too much want to keep everything a secret. Privatizing is the way to go. And now that we've seen it, so it took NASA 12 years to develop the Apollo program, which killed a bunch of people along the way and all kind of money and rockets.
Oh, yeah.
It took another 10 or 11 years to develop the shuttle program. And here's Elon Musk and Sierra Nevada and Boeing and all of them. Less than 6 years, they got workable ships going back and forth to the damn space station. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Amazing.
Boeing had its first one flying in under 2 years. I was like, Sierra Nevada had it in 3. I was like, come on. And they didn't do that faster, cheaper, better shit. They built something that's going to last and reusable and don't blow up. And I'm like, Elon's building ships to go to Mars and landing on their own. I'm like, well, he did blow up the last one.
Yeah, I did see that. Did they blow that up? I mean, let me ask you this.
No, I think it blew up on its own. Yeah, I think it went boo-boo. I think it had a little bobo at the end there.
But I wasn't sure because of where it seemed to be detonated and the fact that it was sort of lopsided as it was.
Yeah. Because
So that's
nobody
interesting.
said, yeah, but nobody actually said when I looked it up, they didn't say if they blew it up or if it just blew over.
Mhm.
Either way it went, the bitch went boom.
Sure did.
Uh, but still, guys, he's close. He's not that far away now, and 2 years he'll be sending stuff to Mars, and we're all going to be going. You got to be kidding me, man! Already going to Mars. See, what kills me is Werner von Braun wanted to go to Mars. So people think the
Mhm.
Apollo program was designed to go to the moon, but it wasn't. Werner von Braun was using the moon as a stepping stone to go to Mars. He wanted to
Mhm.
prove his technology would work so he could send people to Mars because he wanted to start colonizing. If he'd had his way, we'd have a colony on Mars probably 4 or 5 million big by now,
Mhm.
relieving stress off of our planet and giving people an alternative to Earth. Now that's going to happen now, and it's going to probably happen once it starts. It's going to probably happen at a pretty fast pace.
Agreed.
People ask me all the time, "Have you signed up?" I signed up a long time ago, but I'm getting older, so they may or may not take me. It doesn't matter. But a lot of people are going to want to go. But know this, people, it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of hardship in the beginning days.
Mhm.
And if they tell you got to live out in a dome thing in the open, tell them screw you, I'm staying on Earth. If you're not going to be in Olympic mines or underground, you don't want to go. We don't have the technology to keep micrometeorites out yet, so you don't want to be laying in bed when one shoots through your forehead and kills your ass.
Seriously.
So you might want to think about little things like that. But Mars is going to be great once it gets going. What do you mean it's going to be like? Oh, you mean Get Your Ass to Mars movie? Well, maybe a little bit like that. In the beginning, humans like the Wild Wild West. I do agree in some areas it will be like that until law. One thing you count on humans, once enough of us get together, we want law. Even
Mhm.
though on the news today they think we don't. Most of us say, no, we don't want to get worried about gunslingers and people robbing us and charging us. What was it back in the old days during the gold rush? It was equivalent to been like $50 for a cup of coffee in today's world.
Jesus.
So that
Yeah.
was like an ounce of gold back then, people. It was crazy stuff. But I mean, so we don't want to see that kind of stuff. So eventually there'll be a law enforcement. All that'll come along. Our biggest problem on Earth, I think, now is to form some kind of something other than what we have on Earth right now. The UN doesn't work, and I don't want to get into politics, but the UN doesn't work. Anytime China wants something, America vetoes it. Russia wants something, we veto it, or they
Mhm.
veto us. It just nothing ever changes. And as a planet, something needs to start changing. And we need to start thinking of colonization. And Mars isn't the only place we can live in this solar system. There's several other
Yeah.
places we can live. And frankly, Venus is actually, if you could, it's funny. If the humans could figure out a way to get the greenhouse gas from Venus to Mars, you could terraform 2 planets at the same time. You would cool down Venus, which would make it livable like Earth, because they do think at one time it was like Earth, because
Yep.
most people don't realize it, but the upper atmosphere is identical to Earth's. So they do think at one time that planet was like ours. And they do think, Mars at one time like was ours. Both those planets could be safe. And then there's moons, Io, Callista. There's a few others out there, Titan. All these are places we could terraform and live on.
Mhm.
We could even set up places on Pluto and Charon. Now that we know that Pluto's an active planet, not a frozen block of ice. All right, I'm sorry, it's not a planet. I forgot they deplanetized. I think if it's got a moon, it should be called a planet. That's my own personal thing. Okay,
Are they calling it a minor planet? What is it again?
Yeah,
Something like that.
There's a name. There's a special little name.
I forget what it is too. Yeah.
And oh yeah, there's gonna be all kind of stuff out in the Oort cloud we're gonna find. It's gonna be interesting. But we're getting out into space, and we're gonna get out there, and we're gonna do our thing, and we're gonna use the stepping stone theories at first, and grow a little bit of time and expand it. And in 500 years, we'll probably be out pretty regularly out by Jupiter, maybe even closer to the Oort cloud, with missions going back and forth all the time.
Mhm.
And people will be able to stay at different bases, so you won't always be stuck in ships. It'll be a different thing. After about 1,000 years, we'll probably be over to Proxima, maybe even sooner. I mean, Proxima is only 3.8 light years at speed of light, so at half the speed of light, it's only about 7 years away. And don't think we won't be launching missions like that. We will, but it won't be that way, people. It'll be like 3 years. You'll go a year or maybe 2 years, and you'll be out by Jupiter somewhere 3 years. You'll probably sit there for a year on whatever base you're on.
Mhm.
Then another ship will pick you up and bring you in another year. You'll be on it. But that way the resources don't have to be, all for a 7-year trip. And then when you get to the edge of the Oort cloud, you're only a light year out from the base that's halfway there. And then from that base, you're only 0.7 light years from Proxima. So it's doable, people. It's doable in our lifetimes, but we're not going to do it right now because resource-wise, the planet's not united enough to do it. And right now, even the Europeans and the Americans, and when I say Americans, people, when I say Americans, I don't mean the USA, I mean America, the continent. So this side of the planet's a little bit different. There's the United Americas Treaty. The only ones that are really on in it is Venezuela and Cuba. The rest of the Americas is basically kind of feeling like the EU, but a little bit different. We have mutual protection pacts and other stuff, but we still consider ourselves all as Americans, whereas Europe does not feel that way. They're not all Europeans. So when you hear people from Brazil, they'll tell you they're American. They're from South America or Mexico, No, Mexico is not Central America. Stop it. It's North America. People I can't help it. I didn't make it North America. Look, I didn't map design it. Jesus, people. I did not make it Central North America. And people get mad. I had a professor call me out on this. He said, Joe, no, Mexico's Central America. I said, no, it's not, dude. It's North America. He was like, no, I'm telling you. I said, dude, it's no. I said, look it up while we talking. I don't want to embarrass you on the radio. And he comes back. He goes, shut up, Joe.
I do have to say that I think we grew up being taught that Mexico was part of Central America. Though.
I think we did too.
I think so.
I think we did, because I always had the thing of like, because the first time I heard it, I was like, what? No. And then I'm like, Joe, before you argue this, maybe you should go look it up. And sure enough, when I looked it up, I'm like, son of a bitch, it is North America. And most people will assume, a lot of people assume it's South America, which really cracks me up. But still,
that's even more preposterous.
But, oh no, you mean alien and anything paranormal wise, Mexico is full of it. Oh God, it's all of South America is. The central, the north. Okay, anyway, from Mexico down, seems to have a much open relationship with the paranormal than from America up.
Do you think that's a cultural thing? Do you think that's a result of their beliefs?
I think part of it is, and in some ways, because of their cultures, like the Mayans, Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Incans, I think their civilizations were different, and they probably in some ways think of the world differently than we do. Americans get kind of single-minded in the fact that we're used to everything being our way, but that's not the real world. I mean, it is today's world, but it hasn't been the real world. And I think a lot of the South Americans view the world differently, and they don't all think that money and technology is necessarily the way to get to the other side. Correct. It may be the way to get to what you want in this life, but it's not necessarily the way to get to the other side. And I think they understand that a lot more than most people in the first world does.
I agree.
No, I say first world, John, because it's really what we're talking about is first world: America, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. Well, New Zealand probably has a better understanding than most because it's so peaceful down there. How can you not be enlightened? Let me tell y'all something. If you live in New Zealand, you should be freaking enlightened. That place is so laid back. Do y'all know there's no poisonous animals, no spiders, no snakes? I mean, shit. The only thing you got to worry about in New Zealand is if a giant squid grabs you on your way in. But other than that, man, it's the safest place on earth. They don't even have nuclear weapons down there, and nobody targets them. Nobody's gonna waste a nuke on New Zealand. It's a wasted nuke. I mean, what are they gonna do? Beat you up with a kiwi? I mean, really? It's not.
You're right, though. I mean, New Zealand is not necessarily something that's on everybody's radar when we're talking about.
If I could afford to retire, I'd move there. But no, I probably couldn't do radio down there. I do talk to people down there regularly, but the signals aren't always the best, when you go down there. Sometimes you got to go through satellite, there's lag time. And if you go through one of the underwater cables, tell them what might happen. No, sometimes it works great, but sometimes you hear other things.
Oh, I bet.
It's weird. What you got, Chris? No, we're going to bring Michael back. We're going to get into some of the experiences, but we're going to bring him on the next show for that. Tonight, we just wanted, because we're both hosts, we just wanted to get y'all relaxed, let y'all get to listen to a lot of stuff. I said in the beginning, if you read the intro to the show, I said we're going to be crossing a lot of topics to keep up tonight. Yeah, well, no, because Mike's a wealth of information. It's always fun to talk to people who do their research.
Oh, likewise.
What Michael? I mean, the other Michael. Wait, what? Oh, so wait. Let me get this straight in my head before I read this. So what you're saying is, if we leave this timeline and we join the other timeline, that we're now part of that timeline, and this timeline technically does not exist at all anymore. But okay, question. So what happened to all the people in this timeline?
Yeah, no.
So was I that important that I left and the whole timeline disappeared? See, that's where I get confused in this. I mean, really, if my ego's big enough, man, y'all start making me think if I'm leaving timelines, the whole world's going to end. I got to really thinking, well, what the hell is going on here?
He might be onto something. I hate to say this. He might be onto something. And the only reason I'm going to mention that is because if we are creating our reality real time, all right, and we don't really know to what extent, but from what we've learned and what we've been told, it's a lot larger than we think, creating experiences, creating people in our life. Yes, we're drawing those experiences and people to us and creating that in that respect that we, again, can observe. But on what level are we really creating our reality? So if we dip into another timeline, perhaps the timeline that we came from ceases to exist within our specific consciousness. Perhaps everybody else that's involved is still living within that timeline. Whether you're a memory or not is a different question altogether. But that's very interesting.
And that's the other thing. What happens if when you go to one timeline, you come back to yours, do you forget everything from the other timeline?
Right. Well, God, there's so many people. No, but there's so many people we could talk about in terms of referencing certain stories. But, all of this is so subjective. I mean, it's hard to go down that path. I mean, I could talk about Al Balik. I could talk about, his proclaiming that he had been to, 20, 34, whatever the hell it was, different times, within his experiences. And even though I personally have certain conviction with him, people at large have the question of validity. And unfortunately, because that's the first thing that comes up, a lot of people won't entertain what comes next. But if you do your research, you figure it out.
Yeah. And you do. Delhi, that. Yeah, you asked me, but I just posted a link up there. That's when you see that little middle section of your brain right there. That's the reptilian section. That's what makes you, buddy. Without that, you'd be a sheep. Read up on it for yourself. Now, I put it in there because I wanted you to see it, and I just like playing with these new technologies on here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're learning as we're going, guys. It's all new stuff to us. I mean, we've only been using the system for about 3 weeks now, and that's a great system. I'm not hating on it. You're
talking about StreamYard?
Yes, I mean, it's been great. No, we're not asking none of them questions. What you got? So what do you mean? So if the end of the world was coming, could we travel back in time and live in the past as the world ended in the future?
I figured you would be skipping into a different timeline, but then again, you'd have to ask yourself, why are you in a timeline where you would experience the world collapsing? Are you supposed to get something from that? Is that a choice that you've made? Why do you want to escape something that you've agreed to experience?
See, that's a good question, people. Now you got to think about it. If you believe in karma, no. I believe in karma, but I believe I'm a teacher, not a learner. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. See, in the beginning, I always thought you had to do both, but not necessarily everybody in a particular life is here to experience karma in the way you think they are. Some of them are here to dish it out. You got to remember, somebody's got to be teaching if somebody's learning. That's the way the universe works. I didn't make the rules, and it doesn't necessarily mean in each life that's what you are. Some lives it might be both. Some lives you might be the receiver. Some lives you might be the giver. I know y'all it's making all y'all nervous now, isn't it? It's,
well, there's that beautiful duality once again.
It's part of it, and I bring it up, people, because you have to remember that it's the way the universe works. So don't rule out the fact that when you feel like you're being upsetting yourself because you've been harsh with somebody or you've done this, that, or the other thing, it might be their karma. It might be what they needed to learn at that time. It might have been your serving that you may have been the person that dished out that karma, and it may simply have been because they did you something that they shouldn't have, and that was the repercussion for it. But who knows for sure. Well, I'm not the biggest believer in karma in the way most people are. I do believe in somewhat because I figured I was really bad in my last life. So, some of the shit that's happened in this life, I obviously was really, really bad in my last life. So was my wife, apparently, too. She's pretty damn bad, too. So, I mean, like dictator bad, man. I must have been like like a cult or something kind of bad. Yeah, it had to be bad. That's all
I think that there's definitely a cause and effect, and I don't think that it's anything more than that unless we give it the personality. Now, I think you might have heard Laura Lee and I talking about this on one of the shows, and it went like this. When you go to your life review and you live through this and you feel everything that you've done for other people, whether it's positive or negative, however you want to look at it, you yourself are given the chance to say, all right, how would I like to change something? Maybe I wasn't so great to this person. I made them feel this way, knowing full well that you could have been in their shoes and may have been before. How can I do something better with this person? But again, with all that complexity in mind, okay, is it possible that, again, the soul is a very benign entity wherein when it comes to experience, it wants to experience. It doesn't matter what it is, could be preferable or non-preferable in respect to the ego, but in the end, it wants to just experience. And if that's the case, well, man, that's a whole other conversation right there.
It is a whole other conversation. I don't know, Kristen. We got to get out in a few minutes because the outer realm's coming up in a few minutes. But no, I keep telling you about them Canadian women because they're vicious. No, they keep them in. Look, Laura Lee keeps us in a cage, man. I don't even know how to pull Purcell with it. Oh, y'all know who Laura Lee? Laura Lee is hosting Angel Rocker and Trip and Avoid. She hosts her own show on Mondays and she's co-host on Tuesdays with Seraphine Hurley. And Trip and Avoid on Tuesdays. Well, we've mentioned her name a lot tonight without actually telling y'all who she was. Well, because Michael and I know her. That's a difference for us. No, she's a sweetheart. She really is. I give her hell
awesome.
all the time about. I give her hell all the time all about her old man, but because she keeps him locked in a cage. Well, Michelle and Amelia, that's coming up next. Michelle DeRoche, which is Canada's Most Haunted, and Amelia, which does true crime, and they keep them in locked in cages too. Well, no, actually, Michelle keeps him locked to the chair and makes him go get food and bring it back. She's harsh, man.
Boy, that's some foot on.
Amelia's got an electric whip. And then this poor Dave Scott out there in BC is a lady keeps him locked. I seen her with the electric whip too. I was like, what the hell's going on in Canada? So we started Save the Canadian Men Fund. It's rough up there, man. I thought as American men had a bad shit. We ain't got nothing compared to
these my people. God. It's hilarious.
Anyway, guys. No, before y'all stop, I'm just teasing people. We have a lot of good friends in Canada. We got 5-6 hosts from up there.
Yes, we do.
It's a lot of good people up there, and I like to give them hell. I call them
Canadians. I absolutely love them.
I call them the lesser part of the UK.
I can see that.
They're like, wait, you're the lesser part. So you're the little part. I mean, you're the big part, but you're the little part.
I've only ever had one problem with a Canadian, and that was when I was in Montreal wearing a Marlboro cigarette red jacket in front of a blue awning, and the guy took offense to my red. You know, if you've been up to Montreal, you understand the significance of blue and red, and they don't take kindly to red. But I almost got beat up because I was wearing a red coat. But other than that, Canadians have been awesome.
Yeah, they have
any interaction. I love them.
They're good people up there, and you mean no? We'll talk. You know what? We'll talk about that in Essentials. You're talking about the Chinese troops here. We'll talk about that in Essentials. That's not for this show. Marco, one more question, and we got to go. Okay, do we think that the average human has telepathic abilities? The average human, that's a rough question. See, part of me wants to say that everybody does, but then I've done a lot of testing, and to be honest with you, no, most of them don't even get 50-50. So just to help you with this, we've done this in malls and other places. So last time we went to mall, we did 300 people. Out of the 300 people, 2 tested over 60% accurate. Okay, not bad. So they're pretty good. Almost 78% of the rest tested under 50%. That's almost impossible. It's like flipping a coin and getting it wrong every time. I mean, it should be 50-50. So they're not. So that makes me feel that no, those people don't possess it even a little bit. It may be down in their genes, turned on or turned off somewhere. It may be like that possessed, but I find in reality only a few people really possess true psychic abilities. And I'm not saying that more people are not going to get it. And yes, Glenn, it could be activated by the aliens. I don't really know. It could just be a natural progression of who we are, or maybe when they started interfering in our DNA, how many ever millions of years or thousands of years ago it was, maybe they activated, and that's why they follow these family lines so tightly, because those family lines are very telepathic. That's one thing you will find out about contactees and abductees. All of them are empathic, and a lot of them are telepathic. It's actually a requisition to be an abductee, actually, people. It's part of the criteria.
Interesting.
So I'm not ruling out that deep down we may be able to activate some kind of abilities later on. It's just right now it just doesn't seem reachable for most humans. There we go. We'll use that word. Yeah, it doesn't seem reachable for most humans.
You know, I have to agree with you. I have to agree with you, Joe. I don't think that it's something that the common man really seeks to develop. And if they do, it's simply out of curiosity rather than any actual intent to grow spiritually or whatever you'd like to call it. I have to agree again with Joe that I think that there is a latent ability somewhere perhaps within the DNA. But at this point in time where we are, I don't think you're going to see many people deciding to cultivate that in the way that need be. Now, of course, if you were to go off to a monastery or something like that, separate yourself from the distractions of normal life, you might have a better chance of doing that. But there are not many people who are willing to undertake that sort of adventure in this day and age.
And really,
Just
people,
not
do
yet.
you want to really know what's in my head? Really, is that what y'all want to know? Trust me, you don't. Just trust me on this. I don't even want to know what's in my head half the time. I'm just telling. And wait, there's definitely people I personally know. I do not want to know what's in, and I am kind of psychic. And I still don't want to know what's in their damn head. I will
Yeah,
turn that stuff off.
I heard you on that.
I got some friends that I just rather not know. You know what is interesting though is when you meet somebody. You know, you're single and you meet somebody, and you're empathic or telepathic, and you're like you get these really strong signals and you're like no I'm just making myself feel that way, but you've been telepathic and empathic long enough that you know it's something or it wouldn't have kicked in the way it did.
Mhm.
So then I ask people all the time, should you take advantage of it? Is that fair to the other person? Because you have an
That's a
advantage
question.
coming in. Well, I'm gonna tell you a little secret. I use it for business all the time. It's how I judge customers. It's how I do pricing. It's when I know how far I can push a customer financial wise or work wise, because I use those abilities. And I tell people all the time, you should, but you shouldn't invade people's privacy and stuff like that without their
You
permission.
can't.
People will dream with you if you really want them to. And there's people out there that
Mhm.
would love to try it and learn. And it's a fun thing to learn, and you can learn a lot about somebody, and you can learn how to control. At the very least, you'll learn how to control your dreams. At the very least, it'll teach you that much. And not when I say control, I mean participation control, so
Mhm.
that you can change your dream around and become let the construct of the dream let you control it. You can even learn how to control other people's, especially people who are more weak minded or scared of telepathic abilities. You can control theirs. Actually, you can control a lot of people's. To be honest with you, but that's not what you want to do. You just want to learn to use it. You know, if you're empathic and you can dreamweave and you really love somebody and you really enjoy having sex with them, this will intensify it a
Mhm.
hundredfold. All I can tell you is you've never experienced this until you've experienced it. I
Mhm.
don't even know how else to put it into words, but it is a different kind of feeling. It's where our race is going. It's just going to take some time.
I agree.
What do you mean, do
100%.
it? You waiting for the aliens to beam Michael up? What are you talking about?
Think if it
So
was going to
wait,
happen, it might
what?
have.
Okay, Gene's going on something about Stargate, and you look like somebody from Stargate, and you're going to get beamed up. What do you think? He looks like Ronan? He looks skinny, be Ronan now. He got no dreads, people. What is wrong with you?
Not
Yeah,
anymore. I
yeah.
used to, but that was years ago.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
We're
Wait,
talking 20
what?
years ago now.
Okay, obviously the audience in Facebook tonight has been. Y'all must be out in Cali tonight, keeping up the good stuff. Huh? Y'all don't never share no more. What can I say with y'all? Uh, well, all right, real quick, and I got to go because Michelle's probably cussing
Yep.
me right now.
Yep.
We used to allow people to smoke marijuana on the station because it is legal in a lot of states.
Mhm.
And I personally could give a good blank if they do, if they don't. But one of our hosts, for some reason, was getting high as a kite, which he shouldn't have been, but he's getting high as a kite. And it started the big argument amongst some hosts and some listeners. So I said, you know what? Y'all get high, just don't do it on camera.
Hey, listen, you got to keep it
get
professional too. You
yeah,
do. I
you do,
mean,
you do.
what's what looks better? You showing up ready to do the show, or you? Anyway, give me 1 second. So my next
Yeah.
guest, it's just,
What was that question again? Wait, what?
there's got
No,
to be a
what were
limit.
we talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, I know.
I mean,
But
believe
anyway,
me, I've used cannabis for years, and I do use it before I do presentations. But
yeah, it's not
I
wrong
know
with
my limit where I'm just taking that one microdose, if you want to call it that, and I'm where I need to be.
it.
I'm not,
See,
blast out of my head.
yeah, when I'm lecturing, it's good for me. If I smoke a little joint before I go get on the stage,
Right.
because if I don't, I'll get off in like warp speed,
Yep.
but when I do, I'll calm down, go through the routine.
Helps
Because
me focus too.
yeah, hopefully it does, and I like to lay stuff out and make it easier, and that way I'll take more Q&A too. I love doing Q&A. Well, guys, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Michael, give them a quick plug. Tell them where they can find you at real quick.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, as I very much expected it to be, and I can't wait for the next time. You guys can find me on Dark Hour Paranormal on YouTube. You can also find me at Third Phase of Moon on their panel, as well as Third Phase, the sister channel, where we repurpose some of their older sightings and take another look at them in a mature and more informed fashion these days. So thank you very much. Oh, and Black Lotus. You can also find me on Black Lotus on Sundays at 8 o'clock Eastern Time.
There you go, guys. Sounds like he's pretty easy. Third Phase has been around forever, guys. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
y'all can find him. Just go on YouTube and just type in Third Phase. Trust me, they've been around forever. Oh yeah, I've known quite a few people that's dealt with him over the years. Yeah, just type it in. That's all you got to do. But anyway, we got to go. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Doris and people over at Writers of the Future, thank y'all for the awesome iPad with all of Ron Hubbard's entire audio and video library on it. People, y'all just jealous. I mean, you don't even know what this thing called. Oh no, I have great sponsors and great hosts and people. If you're trying to write a book, they give you a free course. It doesn't cost anything, and they'll even help you with the course. On top of that, if you submit a short story and you submit it to them, no one. So when they submit it to the judges don't know who you are. They don't know which sex you are. They don't know what color you are. They don't know anything about you other than the story. It's completely blind judged. So you're not going to get a fair shake anywhere else. And if you win, they fly you out to LA for a week. They wine and dine you, give you awards, hook you up with all the big time people, and really get you started on your career. So it's the only one of the few people that don't charge you to come out and do anything, don't charge you for the lessons, and really want you to win and make a difference in your writing. So, and I mean, for anybody who's promoting better writing, because God knows we need some. Anyway, we got to go. Again, thanks everyone for tuning in United Public Radio, UFO Undercover. Remember, Mike Rosa was with us tonight, and he'll be back, I think, on April 14th. I'll look and see to make sure. But guys, stay out of trouble till then, or as much trouble as you can. Oh, and be COVID safe is all I can tell you. You know, I'm not going to recommend shots or no shots. Well, no, I got a shot. Yeah, I got the Johnson & Johnson one, but I'm not going to recommend or not recommend. And if you want, real quick, since you asked me that, if you want to know me, what happened to me personally, just write me and I'll tell you. I'm not going to get into it on the air because YouTube will probably ban me.
Yeah. That being said, just very quickly, that being said, if anybody has any questions or, want to go into detail about what was spoken about tonight with me, you can email me at darkhourparanormallive, all one word, @gmail.com.
He's easy to find too, guys. We got to go though, because I know Michelle hasn't cussed me yet, but she is cussing me in Canadian right now. I'm just no, guys, don't even take that joke. Come on, you know what Canadian is, right, people? Unless we're talking about in Quebec, Canadian is English. Anyway,
well, thank you so much, Joe. This has been awesome.
Oh my God, a great time. And we'll, next time we have, we're going to actually be talking a little bit about his experiences, and we might touch a little bit UFO stuff too that night. But
sure.
No, we were having a great time. Well, no, we could have went on with time travel all night, people. That's an easy topic. There's so many things we didn't touch there. But anyway, good night, everyone, and stay tuned for the Outer Realm coming up next with the fabulous Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. And until next week, have some fun. See y'all then, guys. Boop.